Political Transparency Podcast with your hosts, Marie-Louise Arnaud and Denis Lemaire.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine your city's administration. You expect it to be efficient, transparent, and responsive, right? But what if the very structure and leadership style at the top are quietly creating challenges? Challenges that impact everything from the public services you receive to your fundamental ability to trust what's happening behind closed doors. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a truly fascinating and frankly critical issue at the heart of municipal governance. It's this collision between a highly rigid, sort of military-rooted management style and the core requirements of modern democracy. We'll explore how this tension can create profound administrative dysfunction and pose concrete, tangible risks directly to you, the citizen. Our focus is on a powerful case study. François Vaillancourt, the Director General of Trois-Rivières, his remarkable career really embodies this very dynamic. His story isn't just about one individual, though. It's a window into broader systemic challenges that affect how your local government operates, how decisions get made, and, well, who truly holds the power. To understand this, we've pulled together quite a stack of sources, everything from legal analyses and official municipal reports to public documents, and even a unique speculative psychiatric profile that offers a compelling lens into some of the underlying psychological factors potentially at play. Our mission today is clear: to help you understand the root of this administrative dysfunction, identify the very real, tangible risks it poses, and explore potential solutions for a more transparent and truly participatory local government. This is about making you well-informed on something that directly impacts your daily life, maybe with some surprising facts and critical insights along the way.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how a leadership philosophy, one forged and proven effective in one very structured, very hierarchical environment like the military, how it struggles so profoundly to adapt to the complex, unpredictable, and often inherently political world of municipal administration. And the stakes aren't theoretical or abstract, are they?
Not at all.
They manifest directly in the quality of services you receive, the accessibility of your local government, and, maybe most importantly, the trust you place in your elected and appointed officials. When the top administrator's approach to management fundamentally clashes with the demands of an open, democratic system, well, the very core of what makes a city function effectively for its citizens can be deeply undermined.
So to really get our heads around the current situation in Trois-Rivières, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Where did this command and control approach, which seems to be causing so much friction and concern now, actually come from? It's not something that just appeared overnight, I gather. It's more like a deeply ingrained philosophy shaped by decades of experience under very specific conditions.
Exactly. And this raises a really important question, one that's foundational to understanding any leader, really. How do a person's formative career experiences imprint their entire professional philosophy? In François Vaillancourt's case, his extensive military background provides a clear and, frankly, undeniable blueprint for his approach to leadership and problem solving. It's a quarter-century narrative that really sets the stage for everything that follows. You have to look at those years.
25 years. That's a significant chunk of a career.
It is. From 1985 to 2009, François Vaillancourt dedicated those 25 years to the Canadian Armed Forces, and it's crucial to clarify this point. His career wasn't on the front lines, in direct combat. Instead, he specialized in what is often the unseen but absolutely critical backbone of any large, complex organization, the world of logistics, supply chain management, and strategic planning.
The nuts and bolts, essentially.
The essential nuts and bolts, yes. These are the disciplines that ensure everything, personnel, provisions, equipment, gets to where it needs to be efficiently and precisely, often under immense pressure. Think about it. Coordinating vast resources, moving them across continents, ensuring every single piece arrives exactly when and where it's needed. That was his world.
High-stakes logistics.
Absolutely. And his career path shows this steady, almost textbook ascent through a variety of demanding roles. He served as a logistics officer in diverse international deployments, places like Germany, Croatia, Bosnia, throughout the late 80s and early 90s. Then, from 1996 to 1997, he took on a particularly significant role, Director of Logistics Operations for the United Nations mission in Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Haiti in the mid-90s, that must have been incredibly challenging.
Extremely challenging. An environment demanding precision and adaptability in, often chaotic international circumstances. Upon returning to Canada, he continued to hold increasingly senior command and directorial positions, Director of Operations, Director of Strategic Planning, and Organizational Performance in Montreal. He also held a significant command posting as Director General and Commander of Logistics, Administrative, and Technical Services for Canadian Forces in the Balkans between 2001 and 2002.
So command experience too, not just planning.
Oh yes, command experience. His final major command before leaving the military was as Director General and Commander of the 25th Canadian Forces Supply Depot in Montreal from 2005 to 2008. And a former colleague from this period, according to our sources, described him as an exceptional officer. Officier exceptionnel was the phrase used. It attests to his competence within that military hierarchical results-driven system.
So deeply embedded in that world.
Safely, this relentless exposure to high-stakes, logistically complex environments really solidified a worldview where precise execution and absolute adherence to command structures weren't just preferred. They were proven necessities for mission success.
Right.
That's the core insight, I think. He learned to thrive in an environment where ambiguity was a liability, where clear orders and predictable outcomes were the goal.
That's an incredible depth of practical experience. So he wasn't just doing logistics. He was leading it at a high level in incredibly demanding situations, often in volatile international contexts. How did that hands-on command, particularly in such high-stakes environments, then get further refined by his extensive academic pursuits? Because he studied quite a bit too, didn't he?
He did, absolutely. And running parallel to this extensive practical experience was a deliberate and continuous pursuit of formal education. While he initially earned a bachelor's in physical education from the University of Ottawa back in 1984, he quickly pivoted. He moved towards studies directly relevant to his military and, as it turns out, future administrative roles. He pursued advanced strategic studies at prestigious institutions, the Canadian Army Command and Staff College in '94, the United States Army Command and General Staff College in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas in 2000.
Big names in military education.
Very much so. And crucially, while he was serving in these high-level command roles, he completed a master's in public administration and MPA from the École nationale d'administration publique, NAP, in 2004, and that was complemented by specialized certificates in supply chain management from HEC Montreal in 2005 and York University's Schulich School of Business in 2006. And then a diploma in Advanced Military and Strategic Studies from the Canadian Forces College in Toronto in 2007.
Wow. So it wasn't just accumulating credentials. He was actively studying the theory behind the practice.
Exactly. This wasn't merely credentialing. It was a deliberate intellectualization of his command experience. He was systematically building a formal academic justification for his command and control methodology. It seems like he was seeking universal principles in the very structured environments he studied, looking for validation.
That's quite the resume.
Yeah.
It sounds like this dual track of hands-on command and continuous academic study wasn't just about accumulating degrees. It was about forging a very specific worldview. He wasn't just practicing a philosophy. He was formally studying and reinforcing it.
Precisely. This dual track reveals a leader who actively sought to build a formal intellectual framework for his hands-on experience. His military career wasn't just a job. It was the crucible that forged his core management philosophy.
And that philosophy is key here.
Absolutely key. This philosophy, deeply rooted in the objective-driven world of logistics and strategic planning, prioritizes organizational structure, process optimization, and operational effectiveness above almost all else. It is, at its heart, a technocratic worldview. Problems are seen as having structural solutions, and clear, unambiguous lines of authority are paramount to success. This mindset would become the defining characteristic of his approach to municipal governance in the years to come. It's the blueprint he brought to every subsequent role.
And so after a quarter century in the military, it seems like his transition to civilian public service was a very logical next step, right? Directly leveraging that specialized expertise he had built up. It feels like a strategic shift, not a random one.
Indeed. It looks very planned. After leaving the military, his first civilian role was as Regional Director of Material Resources and Supply Chain for the Correctional Service of Canada in Quebec from 2010 to 2011. That position directly leveraged his extensive logistics background. It's a natural fit.
Makes sense.
From there, he seamlessly transitioned into the municipal world. He served as Director General for a series of progressively larger and more complex cities. Saint-Lazare from 2011 to 2013, then Saint-Lambert from 2013 to 2015, and then a longer stint in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu from 2015 to 2020.
Moving up the ladder, bigger cities, more complexity.
Exactly. This progression itself demonstrated his apparent competence in municipal administration, at least on paper. Each position represented greater responsibility and complexity. He was building a reputation as an effective, if perhaps uncompromising administrator.
And this wasn't his final stop before Trois-Rivières, right? He also made a strategic pivot to the provincial level, which seems to have further solidified his profile as this kind of systems expert.
Yes, that's right. Following his tenure in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Vaillancourt made another strategic move in August 2020. He was appointed by the Quebec Council of Ministers as Vice President of Intersectoral Acquisitions at the newly created Centre d'Acquisition Gouvernementale, the CAG.
The CAG. That was a big deal, wasn't it? Centralizing government purchasing.
A very big deal. The CAG was specifically established to centralize and streamline government procurement across all ministries and public networks in Quebec, including health and education. The goal was maximizing benefits and efficiency. So this appointment wasn't a detour. It was a direct validation of his core competency.
They wanted his specific skill set.
Precisely. The provincial government was actively tapping a former military logistics commander with deep experience in supply chain management and public administration to lead a major system-wide initiative. This role further solidified his profile as a senior administrator specializing in large-scale organizational systems and procurement. It enhanced his reputation and made him an attractive and seemingly ideal candidate for a major city like Trois-Rivières, which, as we know, was looking for a leader to manage its own rapid growth and complex operations.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. With such a deeply ingrained management philosophy, honed in the military and then reinforced in these large-scale administrative roles, how did it fare when faced with the inherently political, public, and often messy world of municipal democracy? It sounds like a perfect setup for a clash, almost an inevitable one.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a fundamental tension that really transcends any single individual, I believe. The very strengths that make a leader effective in a military context, decisiveness, a strong focus on process, clear lines of authority, the expectation of, unhesitating compliance. Those very things can become points of significant friction in an environment that demands consultation, flexibility, political negotiation, public buy-in.
Completely different skill sets needed, almost.
You could argue that. The municipal world isn't about top-down commands in the same way. It's about navigating a complex web of stakeholders, diverse public opinions, and fundamentally a democratic mandate. And we can see clear patterns of conflict emerging throughout his civilian career, particularly from his time in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu right up to his current role in Trois-Rivières. His 5-year tenure as Director General of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu from 2015 to 2020 was defined by a period of intense political turmoil, especially around 2018.
Turmoil's putting it mildly, from what the sources suggest.
Yes. This crisis wasn't just a local political squabble. It was a fundamental clash over the administrator's role, and particularly his perceived independence from political direction. Specifically, it involved his refusal to yield to the mayor's political will regarding a staff member. He reportedly resisted a mayoral directive he deemed improper.
Standing his ground on procedure, perhaps.
That seems to be how it was framed. The situation became incredibly tense, so tense that he, along with municipal employees, actually filed psychological harassment complaints against the mayor at the time, Alain Laplante.
Wow, harassment complaints against the mayor. That's serious.
Very serious. This deeply dysfunctional situation effectively paralyzed the city's governance. It got to the point that the mayor himself requested provincial intervention to break the deadlock.
So the mayor asked for help because things were completely stuck.
Exactly. It sounds like a true battle of wills. This wasn't just a political squabble, was it? It became a foundational test of who held the ultimate authority, the elected mayor or the appointed administrator.
That sounds like a true battle of wills. This wasn't just a political squabble, was it? It became a foundational test of who held the ultimate authority. How did that dramatic standoff in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu ultimately resolve? And what did that outcome reveal about Vaillancourt's approach?
Well, ultimately, The entire affair proved to be a significant vindication of Vaillancourt's position, legally speaking. In June 2019, an investigation by the Commission Municipale de Quebec, the CMQ, found Mayor Laplante guilty of ethical breaches, and they suspended him from his duties for 95 days.
95 days suspension for the mayor.
Yes. This ruling effectively confirmed that the mayor had been acting outside the bounds of proper conduct, and that Vaillancourt's supposed insubordination was, in fact, seen as an adherence to sound administrative governance in the face of improper political pressure. So this crisis really cemented his reputation as a rigid adherent to process and an administrator unwilling to bend to political pressure, a reputation that would certainly follow him.
So he was seen as someone who stood firm on principle, even against political authority.
That was the narrative that emerged, yes. Now, fast forward to Trois-Rivières, and we see similar dynamics playing out, sometimes in very public ways. A notable confrontation occurred on June 20th, 2023, during a municipal council session. Councillor Richard W. Dober, who is a local chiropractor, a two-time Olympian, someone with deep roots in the community, made what were described as threatening remarks to Vaillancourt. He reportedly said, "You don't know what I am capable of."
That's quite a statement in a council meeting.
It is. And this incident really highlights a stark contrast. You have Dober, with his democratic mandate as an elected representative of the community, expressing frustration, perhaps. And then you have Vaillancourt with his professional, hierarchical military background, where such direct challenges to authority would be, well, unthinkable.
Two different worlds colliding in public.
Exactly. They represent very different modes of operation and sources of authority, clashing head-on in a public forum.
And this wasn't an isolated incident, was it? The sources paint a picture of a larger, more problematic atmosphere at City Hall, a kind of pervasive incivility that seems to have escalated. Can you paint a clear picture of that?
That's correct. This incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It occurred within a broader context described by media reports and councillor declarations as a toxic climate at City Hall, characterized by a general sense of disrespect and a breakdown in professional communication. It wasn't just one flare-up.
A pattern, then.
Seems so. In October 2023, the CMQ's investigative branch, DPIM, actually issued 3 separate ethics citations against councillors Dober, Luc Tremblay, and Alain Lafontaine. The reason: a lack of respect towards both elected officials and civil servants.
So the provincial ethics body stepped in again.
Yes. A councillor specifically described this as a degeneration of an existing incivility. It was a climate apparently so challenging that it led to 3 elected officials taking sick leave.
3 councillors out on sick leave due to the climate? That's significant.
Very significant. And the CMQ itself, in a public statement read by the mayor, emphasized that these were not merely debates between political adversaries, but rather a clear failure in respectful communication with municipal officers. This signals a deeper systemic issue within the council's functioning, indicating that the environment had become genuinely hostile.
Right. And then more recently, there was the motion of blame.
Yes. Then, in April 2025, we saw another significant public event that laid bare these divisions. Councillor Luc Tremblay publicly filed a motion of blame against Vaillancourt himself. The accusation was specific, that Vaillancourt had not respected the city's staffing policy regarding a controversial nomination for the new Bureau of Governmental Relations and Strategic Projects.
What was the issue with the nomination?
The core issue was that there was no public job posting. This became a flashpoint for accusations of a lack of transparency.
Okay.
Vaillancourt's defense was that a rigorous internal hiring process was indeed followed. He cited multiple interviews and psychometric testing by a specialized firm, even without a public advertisement. From his technocratic perspective, the process itself was sound, regardless of the public posting aspect.
But councillors felt different.
Some certainly did. Despite strong support from Mayor Jean Lamarche, who passionately defended his Director General, calling the motion senseless and a great lack of consideration and humanity, and despite the motion eventually being defeated by a vote of 10-5, the incident exposed deep divisions within the council, and it reinforced perceptions of his top-down management style. It highlighted this fundamental disconnect between his technocratic interpretation of policy and some councillors' demands for absolute transparency and public accountability.
So it sounds like this Vaillancourt method, relying heavily on efficiency and process, is consistently running into the wall of democratic expectation for consultation and transparency. From his perspective, that efficiency focus must seem entirely logical, even necessary. But for elected officials and the public, isn't there an inherent tension between pure administrative efficiency and the messy, often slower process of democratic consultation.
That's a critical tension, and you've hit on the core of the conflict, I think. His consistent reliance on data, best practices from other large cities, arguments of efficiency, that's how he justifies his actions. He positions himself as a technocrat who believes in objective, evidence-based solutions. His rationale for administrative reforms, for instance, is often based on indicators of growth, the need to align with models from other major municipalities.
Seeing the city as a system to be optimized.
Exactly. He sees the city as a large-scale logistical challenge, and he believes his methods are the most effective way to address it. However, and this is the crucial part, this approach consistently produces a predictable political reaction. His top-down, efficiency-focused implementation style is often perceived by elected officials, and by unions too, as a significant lack of consultation.
People feel left out of the process.
Precisely. And this dynamic frequently generates genuine concerns about transparency and a palpable fear that power is being subtly shifted. Shifted from the political sphere, the elected council, representing the public's will, to the administrative sphere, specifically the Director General's office. This perceived power imbalance is at the heart of much of the friction.
And this dynamic leads to some pretty strong reactions, like that email you mentioned earlier.
Yes, further illustrating this, we have that internal email Vaillancourt sent to the entire council on June 19th, 2025. In this email, he labeled a citizen who had been critical of the administration a harasser.
Calling a citizen a harasser in an email to council.
Yes, and he urged councilors to report any concerns about alleged threats from this individual. The email was described by sources as having a martial tone, invoking concepts like espionage and disinformation.
Espionage.
Yeah.
Disinformation. Regarding a citizen.
That's what the sources report. It apparently shocked several councilors who saw it as a defensive posture that borders on a witch hunt. It reveals perhaps a deep-seated distrust and a confrontational stance towards criticism that feels highly unusual and concerning in a democratic civilian context. It suggests an almost military response to dissent, which seems very out of place in a city hall setting.
That email sounds incredibly aggressive for a civilian administrator. And it seems this deeply ingrained approach isn't just about professional preference. Our sources suggest there might be a deeper psychological layer to it, according to some of the analyses we've reviewed.
Indeed. Our sources include a fascinating yet speculative perspective from a consulting psychiatrist, Dr. Ellis. It's important to clarify this isn't presented as a clinical diagnosis, but more as an interpretive profile based on observed patterns and public behavior.
Okay, an interpretation.
Yes. Dr. Ellis posits that Vaillancourt's public rigidity and distrust could be the visible symptoms of an invisible internal war, suggesting his rigid administrative style, directness, and social isolation are manifestations of a man struggling to contain a past that threatens to overwhelm him, where a continuous need for procedural control becomes a fundamental defense mechanism.
Control as defense.
Right. The analysis posits that he exhibits traits consistent with what might be seen in a paranoid personality disorder, characterized by pervasive distrust and a tendency towards malicious interpretation of criticism. These traits, the analysis suggests, are combined with strong obsessive-compulsive traits, things like rigidity, procedural perfectionism, and an aversion to unpredictability.
Okay, so distrust, rigidity, aversion to unpredictability. That aligns with the command and control style.
It does align, and Dr. Ellis notes that any attacks on his authority or even perceived psychological evaluations like this one are experienced as direct narcissistic wounds, which can then trigger an aggressive cease and desist letter or attempts to mobilize the council against a citizen, much like that recent email we just discussed.
So criticism is felt very personally, very deeply.
That's the suggestion. The psychiatrist further speculates on the origins of this profound need for control. His past is notably opaque, as we mentioned, and Dr. Ellis suggests this could be, potentially, to hide a difficult childhood maybe marked by poverty, neglect, or even severe abuse. In such a scenario, the Army wouldn't just be a career choice, but perhaps a flight, offering structure, predictability, and escape from a traumatic home environment.
The Army as refuge.
Potentially. His obsession with control would then be a direct reaction to an early life where he perhaps had none. His apparently solitary lifestyle, being single, without children, is seen in this analysis as a possible protective measure, avoiding intimacy to prevent recreating past dynamics where he may have felt vulnerable or exposed.
That's one line of speculation. Is there another?
Alternatively, or perhaps in combination, Dr. Ellis considers the possibility of a repressed sexual identity. If, hypothetically, he is a gay man who joined the military at a time when homosexuality was grounds for dismissal, he would have had to build his entire life on secrecy and compartmentalization.
Constant vigilance.
Exactly. This chronic dissimulation, the analysis argues, would forge a personality where the control of information and image is paramount. And that would directly impact his approach to transparency in public office today.
So control becomes a survival mechanism.
That's the interpretation. Dr. Ellis concludes that the most likely explanation might be a combination of these hypotheses. Perhaps a young man fleeing a difficult home finds refuge in the Army's structure, only to face new potential traumas or pressures that reinforce his defense mechanisms. So for him, incidents like the Dober confrontation or the motion of blame aren't just political conflicts. They're perceived as direct attacks against the meticulously constructed order he has built to survive.
Every challenge is a threat.
A perceived threat to unleash the chaos he has spent his life trying to suppress. This fascinating perspective compels us to ask, how do we as citizens create systems that are robust enough to function democratically, even when individual leaders might be driven by such profound internal needs? The key insight here is that personal psychological factors, when left unaddressed or unmanaged, can potentially manifest as systemic dysfunctions, risking public services and public trust.
So, what does this all mean for you, the citizen listening? How do these deep-seated conflicts at the top, rooted in this clash of management philosophies, may be driven by profound psychological factors? How do they actually affect your daily life and your trust in local government? Because this isn't just abstract political drama, is it? These issues have tangible consequences.
Absolutely. Knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied, right? This isn't just about internal municipal politics or personality clashes. These dynamics have tangible and concerning implications for public services, for the integrity of our digital infrastructure, the municipal workplace, and ultimately for democratic participation itself. When transparency and trust erode at the top, the ripple effects can be felt by every single resident. You, the taxpayer, are ultimately funding and being served by this system.
Okay, let's break down those risks. What's the first major consequence?
Well, one of the most immediate and concerning implications is the profound transparency deficits we see. As we touched on, there's a complete absence of publicly available information about François Vaillancourt's birth date and place, his life before joining the military in 1985, and specific details about his 25-year military career. This includes what specifically occurred during his UN mission in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, from 1996 to 1997, a period that our sources note was fraught with allegations of sexual abuse, corruption, inefficiency, even arms trafficking involving some peacekeepers. Now, there's no suggestion he was involved, but the lack of detail about his role there is a gap.
A significant gap.
It represents a fundamental gap in public accountability for a top public servant who wields significant power over public funds and services.
That's a truly significant blank space in his public record for someone in such a senior public role. And you're suggesting this isn't accidental, but a direct product of his professional background, this military culture.
That seems to be the argument presented in the sources. Military culture, by its very nature, normalizes classification. It operates on a need-to-know basis for information sharing. This can cultivate administrators who instinctively withhold information from the public they serve, often viewing transparency not as a democratic necessity, but perhaps as a vulnerability or even a strategic weakness.
So transparency is seen as risk.
Potentially. The result, the sources argue, is a culture du secret. And when you combine that culture with new powerful technologies like artificial intelligence, well, it creates a potential systemic trust deficit that can be incredibly difficult to overcome.
And this secrecy extends to finances, too.
Yes. Furthermore, there's a distinct lack of financial transparency reported. While his annual salary is suggested to be around $215,000, citizens apparently don't know his exact total compensation package. This would include things like benefits, allowances, pension arrangements, any post-employment benefits, detailed travel and expense account information, or performance bonuses, if they exist.
The full picture isn't public.
Correct. And given his extensive background in logistics and government procurement, this raises critical questions, according to the sources, about potential financial interests he might have. For example, in companies doing business with the city or any ongoing business relationships with former military colleagues. For you, the taxpayer, this means you don't have a full picture of how your money is being spent at the very top, or if there are potential conflicts.
So it's not just about a lack of information. It's about a potential erosion of fundamental democratic principles.
Yeah.
You're absolute right to know how your city is being run and by whom.
Precisely. This lack of transparency directly conflicts with fundamental democratic principles, particularly a citizen's absolute right to know the background of those managing their tax dollars, and the principle of presumptive disclosure, which basically means information should be public unless there's a compelling legal reason for secrecy.
Which is the opposite of need to know.
Exactly the opposite. And when we look at international precedents, places like Nordic countries, New Zealand, Australia, the UK, they all require far greater transparency from senior public administrators. They proactively publish executive backgrounds, compensation details, potential conflicts of interest. The current situation described in Trois-Rivières falls significantly short of these global best practices, making it harder for you, the citizen, to hold your government accountable.
Okay, so lack of transparency is risk number one. What about this AI situation you mentioned? That sounds particularly worrying.
It is. This culture of opacity becomes even more problematic and indeed potentially dangerous when we consider the city's ambitious plans for AI projects, which are described as opaque. The city is implementing an AI system intended to, quote, streamline citizen services, which sounds great in theory, right? Faster permit approvals, more efficient interactions.
Who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. However, crucially, the sources state that the data sets used to train the algorithm remain secret, as does the contract linking City Hall to an external provider. Specialists are denouncing this setup as a black box.
A black box, meaning you can't see inside.
Precisely. You don't know how it works. And the concern is that this black box could reproduce or amplify biases in critical areas. Things like the granting of permits, access to housing, even the allocation of social services.
How could it amplify biases?
Well, if the secret data used to train the AI reflects existing societal biases, perhaps historical biases in housing access or permit approvals, the AI might learn those biases and apply them even more systematically, potentially discriminating against certain citizens or neighborhoods. And the worst part is, you, the citizen, would have no way to understand why a decision was made, or to challenge it effectively if it seems unfair.
That's a huge red flag. If the very data and algorithms are hidden, how can citizens trust the decisions being made on their behalf? This feels like it moves beyond just inefficiency and into genuine risk of inequity.
It's a profound incompatibility with open governance, isn't it? Vaillancourt's documented distrust, as the sources put it, pushes him to restrict all information flow. This approach reminds one more of a secret defense logic than a model of open democratic governance.
Military secrecy versus public openness again.
It seems so. This is fundamentally incompatible with open data principles and citizen co-creation. It risks an AI system that is illegitimate from its launch because there's no public trust or understanding built into it. Furthermore, Vaillancourt's consistent pattern of implementing major organizational changes without broad consultation makes his management philosophy seem poorly suited to the participatory governance AI demands.
AI needs participation.
Good AI implementation inherently requires extensive community consultation and collaborative design. Citizens need to be seen as partners in shaping the technology, not just passive recipients of automated decisions. The sources go so far as to issue a strong warning that the attribution of AI governance to François Vaillancourt represents an existential risk for the digital future of Trois-Rivières.
An existential risk, that's strong language.
It is, emphasizing that AI should strengthen democratic governance, not undermine it. Think about a small business owner applying for a grant, and their application is rejected by an algorithm they can't understand or appeal. That's the potential direct impact on your life.
Okay, transparency deficits, opaque AI. What are the more day-to-day impacts of this administrative style?
Well, beyond the grander issues, these internal conflicts also have direct everyday impacts on municipal services and the workplace climate. Our sources indicate an administrative rigidification where any change in procedure now requires the DG's personal approval, lengthening delays.
A bottleneck at the top.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to get a simple renovation permit or access a community program. What used to take maybe weeks now drags on for months, potentially, all because a single bottleneck at the top slows everything down. This leads to what's described as over-bureaucratization, a profound slowing down of the very processes designed to serve you, the citizen. It ultimately impacts your quality of life and the city's overall efficiency.
So things just take longer to get done. And it's because of a centralized, bottlenecked approval process. And how does this affect the people actually working at City Hall? And by extension, the services they provide to citizens like you.
Right, exactly. And this spills over into the internal culture. The toxic climate and climate of suspicion at City Hall are reportedly well documented. This is leading to an accelerated turnover of key staff, particularly digital managers, who apparently cite this difficult environment as a reason for leaving.
Losing talent because of the work environment.
Yes, this signals an accelerated departure of digital talent, which can severely hamper the city's ability to innovate and deliver modern, efficient services. Furthermore, there's reportedly a record number of psychological harassment grievances and sick leaves among municipal employees.
That's a direct impact on the workforce.
A huge impact. And it directly affects the efficiency and well-being of the public service. When employees are experiencing such stress, when they're leaving in significant numbers, it inevitably affects the quality and speed of the services they provide to the public. For you, the citizen, this could mean longer wait times for services, less experienced staff handling your inquiries, and just a general decline in the responsiveness of your local government.
It all connects back to the citizen experience.
It does. All these factors converge to erode democratic trust and contribute to a concerning decline in citizen participation. Our sources cite a 22% decline in public participation in public consultations. That's a truly stark figure.
22% decline. That's massive.
It is massive, and it indicates that citizens may feel their voices don't matter or that the system isn't truly open to their input, leading to widespread disengagement. We also see the rise of polarization, not just in public discourse, but within the council itself. Between what are called constrained technophiles resistors, maybe those aligned with the administration versus those pushing back. And this contributes to a lasting loss of trust in the city among the broader public.
A breakdown internally and externally.
Yes. This institutionalization of a dysfunctional algorithmic bureaucracy, if the AI isn't trusted, and the interpersonal mistrust within the council directly contribute to reduced citizen engagement. It even raises concerns about potential digital segregation or desertification of certain neighborhoods if technology is implemented without public trust and broad participation. It's like a finely tuned machine, maybe, but the instruction manual is secret and the levers are getting harder to pull, so people just give up trying to use it.
Wow, a 22% decline in public participation. That's a truly stark figure. What do you think is the most significant factor contributing to that erosion of engagement? And it seems like there might be mechanisms in place that prevent proper oversight of all this, further contributing to that loss of trust.
That's a critical point. While the toxic climate and the perception of top-down decision-making certainly contribute, perhaps the strongest factor is that feeling that participation simply doesn't lead to change, that decisions are already made behind closed doors. And yes, the strong defense mounted by Mayor Jean Lamarche during that motion of blame, it suggests to some observers a pattern of political protection that may insulate Vaillancourt from proper scrutiny.
Shielding him from accountability.
That's the concern raised. It leads to important questions about what leverage or relationships might enable such protection, and about the adequacy of oversight mechanisms for senior civil servants in general. If the highest-ranking administrators appear shielded from accountability, it fundamentally undermines democratic oversight and the public's ability to hold their government responsible. It creates a sense that no matter how much you participate, the real power lies elsewhere, beyond the reach of public scrutiny. And that's deeply corrosive to trust.
It's clear there are significant challenges and real risks to citizens, from slow services to potential biases in new technologies, and this profound breakdown of trust. But the sources don't just lay out the problems, they also point to potential pathways for improvement, don't they? What can be done to bridge this gap between a rigid management style and the needs of modern democracy? It feels like a massive undertaking.
Well, there's always more to learn, and multiple perspectives enrich understanding, as the sources themselves suggest. This situation, while complex, does offer critical opportunities for structural changes. It's really about redefining the relationship between administration and democracy to rebuild trust and ensure effective governance that truly serves everyone. The path forward seems to require a multi-pronged approach, addressing transparency, collaboration, and ethical tech implementation.
Okay, let's start with transparency. What are the concrete recommendations there?
To begin, enhancing accountability and transparency is seen as paramount. The sources recommend that all senior public servants managing significant budgets, say, over $1 million, must provide complete biographical information. This would include their full education, detailed employment history, specific military service details like roles and locations, and any past legal proceedings. This directly addresses the current opacity around Vaillancourt's background and ensures a complete picture for citizens.
So no more blank spaces.
Ideally, yes. Furthermore, it's proposed that complete compensation packages, including all benefits, allowances, pension details, post-employment arrangements, be publicly available. This extends to suggesting a public database of all financial interests, business relationships, and potential conflicts for senior administrators. This would ensure that citizens can track potential conflicts of interest easily.
So you, the taxpayer, would finally have a clear view of where your money is going at the top and who might benefit from city contracts.
That's the goal, moving from that need-to-know military mindset to a right-to-know democratic one.
That would be a huge shift towards a more open system.
Yeah.
What about direct interaction with citizens? How can that democratic connection be reestablished and strengthened?
Good question. For direct accountability and reestablishing that crucial democratic connection, the recommendations include advocating for quarterly public meetings. Meetings where citizens can directly question senior administrators about their decisions and performance. This moves beyond just information disclosure online. It's about direct, unmediated engagement.
Face-to-face accountability.
Exactly. Between those who govern and those they serve. On a broader systemic level, there's a call for legislative changes at the provincial level to require complete transparency for all senior municipal administrators, and for the creation of an independent oversight body, maybe something like a provincial ombudsman specifically focused on municipal transparency and accountability.
An independent watchdog.
Right. This ombudsman could investigate citizen complaints and ensure administrators adhere to transparency standards province-wide. And interestingly, to leverage technology for good rather than secrecy, there's even the idea of a digital democracy platform, an AI-powered system, ironically, enabling real-time tracking of public servant performance, spending decisions, policy outcomes. Imagine being able to track the progress of a city project in real time, see budget allocations, understand the policy decisions that's using tech for transparency.
Turning the tool towards openness. Okay, so transparency is one pillar. What about collaboration and that toxic workplace climate?
Yes, beyond transparency, fostering collaboration and improving the workplace climate are seen as crucial for the city's long-term health and its ability to serve you effectively. One key recommendation is to establish a formal council administration liaison committee. This committee, composed of the mayor, the director general, and council representatives, would serve as a forum for early-stage discussion on major administrative reforms and policy changes.
Talking things through before decisions are made.
Exactly. The goal is to ensure political buy-in is secured before initiatives are finalized and brought to a public vote. This aims to transform the dynamic from one of reaction and conflict.
Like we saw with the motion of blame.
Precisely. Transform it into one of genuine co-creation, where ideas are shaped together collaboratively.
So getting everyone on the same page much earlier in the process, rather than having decisions handed down from above. That makes perfect sense. It moves from a confrontational dynamic to a collaborative one, which should benefit everyone, especially the citizen who relies on these services.
Exactly. It's about building consensus from the ground up, integrating political input much earlier. Also, the sources recommend that the Director General and Council undertake a joint review of key governance policies. Things like staffing policies, for example, to remove ambiguities and explicitly balance the dual principles of administrative efficiency and public transparency.
Clarifying the rules of the game.
Right. This proactive step would reduce future disputes stemming from differing interpretations of rules, clearly defining roles and responsibilities. A robust public performance dashboard is also suggested. This would be public-facing, transparently reporting on key performance indicators, KPIs, across all city departments.
All kind of KPIs.
Things like project completion rates, budget variances compared to plan, and importantly, citizen satisfaction with services. This provides objective, data-driven evidence of the administration's performance, helping to build public trust and counter purely political criticism. It gives citizens verifiable metrics.
Data for accountability. Makes sense. And what about the recommendations from that psychiatric analysis regarding the workplace?
Yes, crucially, our sources include recommendations stemming from that speculative psychiatric analysis, focusing on organizational well-being within City Hall. To counterbalance the existing military style, it suggested that the city and state a chief people and culture officer.
A dedicated role for workplace health.
Exactly. This new role would be dedicated to fostering a healthy, open, and collaborative work environment, focusing on the human side of the administration. And to track and address that toxic climate, the recommendation is to publish anonymous quarterly metrics on things like absenteeism, employee satisfaction surveys, and staff turnover rates.
Making the internal health visible.
Yes, creating an objective way to measure the internal climate and identify areas needing improvement over time. And notably, for the individual involved, the psychiatrist suggests, hypothetically, schema-oriented psychotherapy for Vaillancourt to work on deep-seated mistrust and control issues, alongside psychoeducation for the counsel to help them understand his psychological defenses and how to interact more effectively.
That sounds delicate.
Extremely. And the source emphasizes this would, of course, have to be based on free consent, confidentiality, and absence of any disciplinary mandate. It's framed as a supportive approach aimed at fostering better communication and understanding, not punishment.
So a truly multi-pronged approach that addresses not just structural issues, but also the human elements and their impact on the organization, aiming for a more functional and perhaps empathetic public service.
And then there's the critical piece about AI implementation. How do we ensure that cutting-edge technology serves democracy rather than undermining it?
Yes, ensuring ethical and transparent AI implementation is a distinct and urgent area of focus in the recommendations. They reiterate the importance of establishing an independent AI oversight committee. Critically, this committee should have citizen representation and veto power over major algorithmic decisions.
Veto power for citizens. That's strong. It is. It ensures that the public has a direct say in how these powerful tools are developed and used, preventing them from becoming unaccountable black boxes. There's also a call for mandatory public consultation processes for all AI implementations affecting citizen services, reinforcing the need for community input from the very beginning, ensuring the technology serves your needs, not just administrative convenience.
Building it with the community, not just for them.
That's the idea. And to further safeguard citizens, the creation of citizen appeal mechanisms for algorithmic decisions is highlighted. This means if an automated decision impacts your life, say, regarding a permit or service access, you would have a clear, transparent way to challenge it and get a human review. You wouldn't be stuck arguing with a machine.
The human backstop.
Essential. The principle that elected oversight remains paramount in all AI governance structures is also strongly reinforced. Technology must remain a tool for and not a replacement of democratic governance. And given the current concerns about existing AI projects and their potential for bias, the sources recommend a complete audit of technological decision processes. Even more significantly, one ministerial report apparently suggests a potential 6-month moratorium on the current AI project, pending an independent audit of the algorithms and data being used.
Hitting pause until it can be verified.
Exactly. This underscores the urgency, emphasizing that the time to act is measured in days, not weeks, given the rapid pace at which these systems can become entrenched and potentially problematic if not implemented carefully and transparently.
So what does this all mean? Ultimately, this deep dive really shows us that local governance isn't just about policies and budgets, is it? It's profoundly about people, personalities, and the principles that guide leadership. The Frères Rici and Trois-Rivières, rooted in this highly structured, military-trained approach, meeting a democratic, participatory system. Well, it has real and tangible consequences for you, the citizen. We've seen how a strong, centralized focus on process and command, while maybe efficient in certain contexts, can lead to critical deficits in transparency. How it can impact the efficiency and responsiveness of public services, breed profound mistrust between the administration, the council, and citizens, and even risk discriminatory biases through opaque technological implementations like AI. It's a complex interplay of personal history, professional training, and the inherent demands of democratic public service.
Yeah, and it raises a really important question for all of us, doesn't it? If the very foundation of our administrative systems is built on principles that can, potentially, clash with democratic ideals, then what truly robust and democratic oversight mechanisms must we champion to safeguard our collective future? And how do we strike that balance? The balance between the undeniable need for administrative efficiency and specialized expertise on one hand, and the equally vital demands for transparency, broad citizen participation, and unwavering accountability on the other. This case really demonstrates the urgent need for democratic reform that perhaps leverages technology to strengthen rather than weaken public accountability and trust.
And as citizens, it's important to remember, you fund these administrations. You're the ultimate beneficiaries, or, in cases like this, potentially the victims of their functionality or dysfunctionality. The question isn't just about identifying problems, but about actively demanding proactive solutions. Solutions that ensure our cities are governed not just effectively, but truly democratically, with your interest and your right to know placed at the very forefront. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is, what is your role in shaping this future? How can you engage to ensure your local government is both efficient and democratically accountable?
This has been the Radical Transparency Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we encourage your continued engagement in democratic accountability. RTA Intelligence Inc. is committed to the highest standards of citizen journalism, adhering to editorial principles established by the New York Times, PBS, BBC, CBC, AFP, Reuters, and Associated Press, as well as the Quebec Press Council Code of Ethics. These principles include accuracy and fact-checking, editorial independence and impartiality, fairness and right of reply, transparency and accountability, source protection, and separation of news from opinion. Our mission is to serve the public interest through rigorous adherence to these fundamental journalistic standards. This episode was produced using a collaborative approach that combines human editorial oversight with generative artificial intelligence. Human editors made all content decisions, fact-checking, and editorial judgments. AI technology assisted with research analysis and content structuring. All factual claims have been verified through multiple independent sources and are limited to publicly available information. We maintain complete editorial independence and have no financial relationships with any subjects discussed. All individuals and organizations mentioned have the right to respond to our analysis. We are committed to correcting any factual errors promptly and transparently. Our content is produced under the protection of Canadian Charter rights to freedom of expression and serves the democratic need for governmental accountability and informed public discourse. Any future projections or scenario analysis presented constitute hypothetical scenarios based on professional assessment methodologies and are not guaranteed predictions of future events. They are provided for educational purposes to inform public debate. RTA Intelligence Inc. expressly disclaims all liability and responsibility for any physical, moral, financial, or reputational damages arising from this episode. This content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. RTA Intelligence Inc. assumes no responsibility for decisions made based on this content. By listening to this episode, you acknowledge that any reliance on the information presented is at your own risk. This disclaimer is governed by Canadian law and Quebec provincial law. RTA Intelligence Inc. reserves all rights under freedom of expression protections and journalistic privilege. For corrections, responses, or editorial inquiries, contact RTA Intelligence Inc. We guarantee acknowledgement within 24 days and response to factual correction requests within 72 days. This content may be shared for educational and public policy discussion with proper attribution. Any redistribution must include reference to RTA Intelligence Inc. and disclosure of AI assistance in production. Thank you.